Congressman Jodey Arrington. He is the chairman of the House Budget Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Good morning. You bet. Good to be with you, Maria.
Can you walk us through the plan to fund government in two ladders?
Sure. I think first we need the new speaker, who's been on the job all of 2 weeks, to have the runway to finalize our funding package, to take the fight to the Democrats and start that negotiation, and then most importantly, make our case to the American people that we have a woke and weaponized bureaucracy that needs to be reined in. We need to reduce spending, and we need to secure the border. We just need to be on a different track altogether. And then finally, the sort of two-step process, we need to break this up into chunks that are digestible, because we have to have meaningful debate, and we have to convince the American people that this radical agenda of the Democrats has been disastrous for the country. It's hard to do that when you take this massive 12 appropriation bill funding package. And so starting with the least controversial things, building momentum so that we can end up with a responsible funding package, I think is the right approach. And I applaud Speaker Johnson for not only doing that, Maria, but establishing a new precedent that we will restore fiscal sanity in this town by paying for the emergency supplemental in the Israeli assistance bill.
Yeah, and I understand that. These omnibus bills at the end of the year that threaten everybody's, holidays and just force everybody to make a decision that they otherwise would not have made has to go. But the bill is still facing some criticism, even from Republicans. Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde joining me earlier today, saying why he's going to vote against this. Watch this.
This is a bad bill. It should not pass. It will not pass with solid Republican support. It's going to have to pass with Democrat support. There needs to be, at a minimum, the FRA levels and not the current Pelosi spending levels with the current Pelosi policy in it.
So do you think we'll see a government shutdown then?
No, I think that's not what's going to happen. But when you take the threat of the government shutdown off the table, then you completely lose all your leverage here in Washington.
So what do you think? Other Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Chip Roy, Warren Davidson, all posted on social media. They say they don't like a laddered CR approach. It looks gimmicky to me, but I'm open to what the House is talking about. Murphy said on the weekend programs this weekend. Your response?
Well, I think we're going to have to fight to use the power of the purse effectively to reduce spending, to secure the border, and change the policies currently that are failing this country, as I mentioned before. No doubt about that. There'll be a fight, but we need to pick the time and conditions of our choosing to have that fight. You just talked about trying to do something in the middle of a holiday. That's a recipe for getting jammed by the Democrats with an omnibus, which has failed us for decades. So, look, we need to bend the spending curve. We need to right-size the bureaucracy and do all these things, especially secure the border and protect the American people. But we've got to do that in a smart way where we have the best chance of success. And the biggest thing that this new speaker needs is runway to make the case to the American people, Maria, like we did in the debt ceiling debate that we won. But you only win that when you win hearts and minds, and this speaker hasn't had enough time to do that. It's a reasonable thing to lock in, basically freeze spending, give him time, make the case, and win the day and have a better outcome in the final wash.
Yeah, and I understand giving him runway for this. I mean, you're right. He's on the job 2 weeks. But how do you see longer term actually getting spending down? Right? I mean, you're talking about the Democrats not wanting to cut any of this, and also the military spending. And I know you dealt with that, weeks ago, but we're in a completely new, dangerous world. Why is it that the bills providing funding for agriculture, military construction, veterans affairs, energy, water can be paid by January 19th, and then how come the others have to be in a second bill not until February 2nd? Why those bills there for February 2nd?
Well, I think you've got defense and homeland, which I think are more serious issues than the energy, water, or interior bills, ag. and the like that are in that first tranche. I think it's just a matter of we have more traction with one that can build the momentum so we can have a final funding of the government. But to your question about how are we going to do this, we have to be able to walk before we run. Discretionary spending, as you know, is only a third of the budget. The 2/3 of our budget is on auto spend. We have to do this well and be faithful in the small things so that we can focus on the greater driver of the debt, which is mandatory spending, welfare, health care. We need to bring the improper payments, the fraud, which is $2 trillion over 10 years down. That's why I have a balanced budget that reduces the spend by $16 trillion. It reduces our debt to GDP by 50 points. That blueprint is what we have to focus on if we're serious about staving off a debt crisis and causing irreparable harm to this great country of ours and our children's future.
So you're expecting Democrat support then for this to pass. Do you expect the government shutdown, or will you have the Democrat support to keep funding government beyond Friday?
The Democrats are going to support extending this temporary funding through the end of the year. I don't think they want to have a shutdown fight during Christmas.
Sure.
And so I think you're going to have a bipartisan support to say, give this speaker some time, and then let's negotiate a final funding bill that is responsible and recognizes, and I heard Chuck Schumer in your opening, that recognizes that the American people are changing their spending habits and tightening their belts, and they expect their government to do the same.
That's exactly right. Real quick, Congressman, before you go, you said, the border needs funding. I'm having a hard time with that because I thought the border didn't need any more money because you keep sending money to the border. That's only going to have the Border Patrol create more housing for the migrants. How is that securing the border? I thought you just needed a policy change at the border. And if the border is such a problem, how come your colleagues are so reluctant to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas?
Oh, I'd impeach him yesterday because he's been derelict. He's not been honest with the American people. And we have a long list of transgressions there that are totally impeachable. But I never mentioned funding, actually. I said we have to secure the border, which means we have to change the policy. So you're right, Maria. This isn't an issue of resources. It's an issue of political will that this president doesn't have to prioritize the American people's safety. He wants to talk about Ukraine and other things that have their place with the proper context and the proper controls. But the number one safety and security issue is the border for the American people. And he's nowhere to be found. So, no, you're right. It's about remain in Mexico, stop the catch and release, enforce the law. These things don't cost money. They require political courage, and they require a president that will actually take his commander-in-chief job seriously. Clearly, this one doesn't.
We don't have that right now. Congressman, Mr. Chairman, good to talk with you. Thank you, sir.
You too, Maria. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Jodey Arrington joining us in D.C. We'll be right back.